considering Joe Biden's legislative record, a lot of people, especially progressives, people on the left, were, I think, warranted in their hesitation to vote for Joe Biden or to support Joe Biden. But a lot of people still went out and voted for Joe Biden because of Trump and, the obvious threat that Trump was. And after that 4 years was, a lot on a lot of people's conscience. So people went out and voted for Joe Biden. But the cry, to get people who obviously disagreed with pretty much everything about Joe Biden, considering his past, was that once he got into office, we were going to push him left. And I haven't been seeing that happen as much. As of late, I've seen, progressives speaking out more against Joe Biden, and especially when it comes to student debt and when it comes to the migrant detention centers, the kids in cages that are still around. So I've been seeing more, but really not enough. And on one front, especially considering, what happened in the summer and the BLM protests and, the fervor that was around the country, the energy there was behind criminal justice reform and police reform. Now, of course, we got Crime Bill Joe and self-proclaimed California's top cop, Kamala Harris, as the Democratic ticket. Go figure. Which should have been a sign right there. But, they said push them left, push them left. Okay. Well, there was a leaked audio call. This happened back in December. Joe Biden had a Zoom session with a bunch of civil rights leaders from civil rights organizations, and he had a conversation with them. Now, within that conversation, there was a part where one of the leaders, she asked that Joe Biden use his executive power to pass an executive order that would basically create a database for police complaints so that these police officers can be tracked when they have these complaints or if they get fired, so they aren't just moved to another precinct. So there's some type of accountability there. That was one ask, and one of the other gentlemen was asking, or was telling Joe Biden to make sure he acts expediently and boldly as to not upset the voters in Georgia. This was before the Georgia Senate race happened. And so let's take a look at the tone that Joe Biden came back at these leaders with for minor and simple asks of him and his administration.
We have the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which everyone on this call among our groups worked on and that we think is so important. It's not clear that we have the votes for it, but President-elect, that politics is not about simply saying there are this many Democrats and this many Republicans. The president has power. He has the bully pulpit. He has moral authority. And so we would ask you to lend your voice and your strength and your influence and your power and your ability to reach across the aisle to try and pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. But failing that, we would ask you to pull from that act measures that can be enacted by executive order. You have the power to call for a national database on police misconduct. You have the power to ask for a registry that will allow people to easily search in public multiple misconduct complaints against particular officers. You have the ability to impose a database around police killings and police shootings. We know everything that happens to police officers because the FBI keeps a database, but we rely on the Washington Post to tell us how many people have been shot and killed by the police and what the racial breakdown is of those statistics. We need good data so that we can understand what is really happening around policing. And these are things that you can do by executive order.
President-elect, you mentioned more than once how the Black vote saved you in your races in the Senate in Delaware. You've talked about your friendship with Mouse. We are now saying the Black community have stood up in this election cycle. Let's not suffocate the Black vote in Georgia and make sure we send the right message, because the success of this administration will be the ability of the Senate to confirm your nominees. We have an opportunity here, and we want to make sure we seize upon this opportunity and allowing for the input necessary 10 more appointments to go. A lot of people in our community are getting a little anxious because they are not seeing enough of the progress they thought they would have seen at this point. Let's not disappoint them, and let's not get to a place where voters in Georgia begin to second guess.
Okay, let me respond. I've got to go. Let me respond. There's a lot to respond to here. Let's get something straight. You shouldn't be disappointed. What I've done so far is more than anybody else has done this far. Okay, number one. Number two, I mean what I say when I say it. I mean what I say when I say it. I'm the only person who's ever run on 3 platforms that I was told could not possibly win the election, and I never ceased from it. One was on restoring the soul of this country because of what I saw happen in Charlottesville. That was it. No one else was talking about it. The words of presidents matter. Nobody else, no progressive, was talking about it. I did.
Wow. So he's telling them that they shouldn't be disappointed and that he's already done more than any other president had at that point, which, you know, he had just got elected a month before. He wasn't even in office. So that sounded very, very Trumpian, very Trumpian. But also just the tone of voice he was speaking at them with, as if it wasn't their prerogative to ask him for things. It wasn't within their means or within their ability to question him. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the tone of voice he attacked them with. I don't appreciate that as a black man. Those are civil rights leaders pushing for the advancement of people of color. And I don't like Joe Biden yelling back at them like they're his kid or something, or they're some, little some teenager badgering him at one of his rallies or something like that. No, those are respected civil rights leaders, and you should treat them with the respect that they deserve. And the minor asks that they were presenting, I think, is the minimal that you could do, Joe Biden, considering all the nonviolent black and brown people that were locked up because of the crime bill that you touted so highly and that you still won't apologize for. And we really should have known. We really should have known. And even after all that happened in the summer and all the energy there was behind police reform, what did Joe Biden say when it came to taking some of those resources away from the police, who don't really provide any positive things to a community? Like when you strip away money from things like community centers, boys and girls clubs, schools, job opportunities, job trainings, when you strip away money from that, from a community, and you just throw it all into policing that community, you strip that community of value. You force that community into being a more violent and dangerous community because there's no opportunities, and then people have to go out of their way to survive, and then they turn to a life of crime, or they get coerced into joining gangs or joining groups that aren't as savory. That's what happens when you strip communities of their resources. And Joe Biden knows that. Everyone knows that. I mean, look at a suburb, right? They have small little police precincts. Most of their money goes towards programs that will help the community. But when it comes to cities, it's half the budget goes straight to the police. So they know this, but let's see what Joe Biden said in response to the outcry of people all around the country, young people, old people, black and brown people, white people. I mean, those protests were filled with people of all colors, all races. Those protests were America. Those protests were a reflection of what America should look like. Everyone coming together, walking in lockstep. Even if this particular issue doesn't affect them personally, walking together with their fellow Americans to push for reform. Let's see what his response was to all that outcry that happened over the summer.
What I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, The only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down.
He wants to fund them more. He wants to give them more resources than they already have. I mean, what can you even say? Like, what was the point of us protesting? What was the point of us putting our bodies out there in the middle of a pandemic to bring light to a situation? What was the point of it if we're going to have someone in office who says that they're going to increase the police budget more than it already is? It's already bloated. They're spending money on robot dogs and tanks and random stuff because they have surpluses in this huge budget and they have to spend it on something, or it might look like they don't actually need all that money. That's what Joe Biden wants to do. And the reason I'm so upset and so angry about this is because every single day I have to go on social media and see people that look like me getting killed in the streets, getting brutalized in the streets. Someone like Daniel Prude, who was ostensibly having a mental health episode. He was approached by police. He complied with every order, and he ended up dead because they put a bag over his head. Even though he was already apprehended, they decided that they need to put a bag over his head. So when you do that and you kill Black men like that, look at what you do to their families. Look at what you do to someone like their daughter.
I never thought I would be seeing my father that way. And to this day, I'm still waiting on him to call me and say, I'm coming home. I'm on my way back to see you. I'm coming to get you. That's all that's crossing my mind. And to know that I will never get there is breaking my heart. When I first saw the video and I heard the officers telling my father to get on the ground, and he said, okay, sure. He got down. They said, put your hands behind your back. He put his hands behind his back. They laid him flat on his stomach with no problem. My father didn't resist. He did not fight. And I don't understand how anybody could say or feel like he was a threat to the police when he complied with all orders. I feel like this case was simply just a case of police brutality and racism. A racist police officer saw a Black man in need and decided that he just didn't deserve to live. This should not keep occurring. Nobody deserves to die when they are in need. Nobody deserves to die in police custody. The police are put out to protect and serve, not kill. And they did the complete opposite of their jobs. We all loved our father. I love my father dearly. So to see him in that state it was heartbreaking. The man on the video is presented as helpless and in need of support. But the man that I knew prior to that was not like that. My father was always energetic. He was happy-go-lucky. He was the person that made everybody laugh, and he was the person that always gave good advice. So for the world to see him in that state versus the way that I saw him and my family saw him, it hurts me because nobody actually got to experience him as himself. I believe wholeheartedly that there was a cover-up, because if my father died March 30th, there's no reason why this story is just now hitting the media September 2nd. We need everybody to band together, of whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. If you support this cause, We just need you to come together and actually protest and get our voices heard, because if we're silent on this, nothing's going to change. And in the next few months, there's going to be another unarmed Black person killed by the police. This has to stop.
I mean, wow, that hits me right here in my heart, because that could be me, right? That could be my father. Who knows? That's just unbelievable what she and her family has to go through. And the fact that it was buried for months still didn't, I mean, I didn't see it make headlines. And now the grand jury decided not to indict any of those 7 police officers that were involved in that incident. Just unbelievable. I mean, there's no justice. There's no justice. And then LAPD, which is, historically been one of the worst police, police precincts or whatever, police units, police departments. This happened on Valentine's Day, a little over a week ago. They were circulating a card with George Floyd's picture on it that said, "You take my breath away." What kind of vile human being would do something like that? I mean, just unbelievable. No regard for human life. And those are the people that are supposed to be policing us, telling us what's right from wrong, upholding the law so we don't break it when they do stuff like that. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the Democratic Party better know that eventually people are going to wake up to the fact that they make a lot of hefty promises and don't ever seem to keep them. And especially when it comes to the Black and brown communities, people are going to wake up eventually. And that's a very important voting block for the Democratic Party. So maybe they should start treating us like the core of this party. Otherwise, they might not be winning a lot more elections in the future.